Has he had his walk yet today?
200 miles away in Devon, the search is underway for another child who's long since grown up.
My name is Claire. I'm looking to find Petra, a local schoolgirl, who helped us when we took in 21 refugee children from the war in Bosnia.
50 years after World War II, another genocide did happen on European soil, this time in Bosnia, displacing thousands of children and changing the life of one British housewife forever.
I loved them. I loved them so much, those children and the mums.
You definitely changed afterwards.
I felt different, yes, I felt completely different. I don't often talk about it to you. It's difficult to explain. It's very hard to explain. That's little Amina, bless her heart, looking very deep in thought. I mean, no child should have an expression like that on their face. She was on her own and she'd left 2 sisters and her brother behind. These poor little children would never have seen their mothers again if it were not for Petra.
Claire took 21 refugee children into her former home in northeast Scotland. Thanks to Petra, she was able to reunite those children with their families and help them start new lives in Britain.
I always love going back to Scotland. Quite emotional to return to the place where this important chapter in our lives happened.
One of the children housed by Claire was Amina. They haven't seen each other for over 15 years.
Oh, you've grown up. Yeah, it's lovely to see you, darling. Lovely. There's Ahmed. Is that you, Amina?
Yes.
That is you. I remember you like that.
Yeah. I call her Mama Claire because she's basically like a second mom to all of us.
I have such happy memories of that time.
Me do too. I always dream about the house.
Do you? The house where Claire took in Amina and the other refugees, Truckle Hill, is now a B&B, and I've arranged to meet Claire there. Claire, what on earth possessed you to take in 25 Bosnians, 21 of them children?
It wasn't exactly a decision. And a lot of people have said, what on earth possessed you? Including my husband at one stage. We were predictable, Andrew and I, to the minute. We always watched the 6 o'clock news.
About 350 children assembled in the Blitz centre of the city. This family, like all of them, didn't know when they would see each other again.
I remember people being turfed out of their homes. There were tiny children, some of them were being carried, some were dumped on carts.
Every day, a small group of mothers and children leaves by bus a convoy of grief as the fighting rages above them.
I just felt, Andrew and I both, we talked to it, and isn't that absolutely dreadful? That shouldn't be happening. Why aren't we doing something? There was an advertisement in a Sunday newspaper which said they would dearly love to have some foster parents who would volunteer to have one child from the war zone for 3 months. And I said, the house is absolutely empty, we've got loads of rooms upstairs. Why not? It'd be lovely to have a child to look after as well, or 2 perhaps, I said, a brother and sister.
So you thought that you were going to bring in 2 children, and then 21 arrived. How did that happen?
The phone rang, and it was the charity. There's a bit of a hiccup, he said. There's a little plane with 21 children and 4 mothers, and our children are probably amongst them. He said they cannot take off till they have an address to go to. My brain went into overdrive because it was a very emergency situation. Well, all right, I said, OK. Then I thought I'd better ring Andrew. Oh, he said, for goodness sake, it'll only be for a couple of days. Let them come here. I said, what a good idea. And the plane was already in the air by that time.
The small aircraft arrived at Gatwick Airport after a 7-hour journey. It had brought to safety 21 children aged between 5 and 14 and 4 adults.
It was a very small plane, no seats, so we were all sitting on the floor. It was very traumatic because, you know, as a child, you don't know what's really going on. You don't know the concept of war.
They faced another 12-hour journey by coach to the home of Claire and Andrew Findlay. a few miles outside Elgin.
Having originally agreed to take in just 2 children, Claire was now about to give home to 25 refugees. Just 4 mothers were coming with the children. As far as Claire knew, most of them were orphans.
I suddenly felt terribly. I thought, oh goodness, supposing I've got it wrong. I wonder how the children would be, how old they'll be. It was very short-sighted of me, and I hadn't taken in the implication. I was thinking of all the things that could go wrong. Then, just happened, I think I must have looked out of this window and suddenly saw this big coach, and I could just see the windows and lots of little faces looking out, curious and sort of looking around. You just knew there had been a terrible time in their lives. It was just written on their faces. And I remember thinking, thank God I said yes.
I remember looking and just seeing, wow, where have we come? And then Claire came and she had this beautiful big smile.
I said, much practice Bosnian. Milo mi jeta zan vazu Bosnao. Thank you, welcome to my house, you are very, very welcome. At which they all, with a flood of Bosnian, started talking to me. I said, ne Serbo-Croat mi parlez-vous.
It's hard to imagine the feelings of these children so far from home, but safe for the time being at least.
As word spread, the local community in Murray rallied round, helping in any way they could.
We weren't fully prepared for it at all. But there were countless local people who did huge amounts. The news travelled like wildfire. Cars started coming up the drive. It was as though there was a convoy. One after another, people came with big black sacks filled with things. There were clothes, there were toys, there were coats, there were anoraks.
That's some of the clothing which is being sorted out.
The baker rang up and said, if you need extra bread, you can have it for free. The butcher did the same.
David, is it?
David, yeah.
Acting local unpaid chef.
They became a team. I don't know how we could have done it without them. It was a very generous response to what they perceived as being quite rightly an emergency.
Despite their ordeal, the children appeared to be settling down well this afternoon.
The children ran upstairs and they were delighted as they went into the different rooms and saw the little beds. And on each pillow, there was a bit of fruit, some sweets, and a cuddly. So that was my daughter's room. The bed was where it is now. And the 5 little girls, I think, crept into that. But they were tiny, very thin, and very little. This room here, there were 2 bunk beds. It did look quite fun. It looked like some dormitories. But bear in mind, we were only talking about 2 or 3 days.
The plan was for the orphans to be placed in foster homes up and down the country after a few days.
Hello, what's your name?
But Claire still didn't know which of the children were orphans or what they'd witnessed in Bosnia.
We don't know which are brothers and sisters who were on their own. We couldn't speak their language, and they couldn't speak English.
Okay, bye.
So you've got all the help and all the toys and the shelter, but
Yes,
there's
but this
nobody
was-
who can actually speak to them. How did you communicate?
Well, by some extraordinary coincidence, Gordonson rang up one day. The headmaster said, Claire, we've got a girl here, a 16-year-old, who speaks Serbo-Croat, which is what your Bosnians speak, I expect.
What are the chances? The local boarding school has 1 pupil who can speak the language.
I mean, wasn't that amazing?
What was her name?
Petra, and she had a sort of slightly Slavic-sounding name as well. Lovely girl, sweet, happy, friendly person.
So this is the most important
The
thing,
most important detail.
is 16-year-old Petra.
Yes,
and this is
very.
the first time you're actually going to talk to the mothers.
And find out what happened and, which of the 13 orphans.
And so what did you discover?
I knew they were Bosnian Muslims, but they said their lives suddenly became very, very difficult indeed. They got sort of either chucked out of their jobs or they'd refuse to serve them in the shops. But things then got very much nastier. The Serbs would pick a house in the Muslim end of town, and they would throw stones up at the windows to wake them up. They would barricade them in, and they would set fire to the house. And they wouldn't let them out.
Many refugees have flooded into the town of Travnik, claiming there'd been a massacre of 60 Muslims.
With their families, they've suffered as much as anybody has in Europe since the Second World War. And close up, it shows.
It's heartbreaking. The fear, the brutality of it, and what makes it worse is the kids. This is ethnic cleansing taking place in Europe in the 90s. It's the worst of humanity, isn't it? You're the same people, you're neighbours, you're all of the same land, and yet families are running in fear of their lives. As Petra started talking to the children, the truth of what they lived through began to emerge.
We were forced to leave our home, and we had to walk 24 kilometers.
All the time we can hear
the gunshots.
Yeah.
I remember there was a river there, and we went down to drink some water. There was a lot of dead bodies in that water with blood.
They said they came across the bodies of the friends who'd left on the coach the day before, who'd obviously run into a Serb patrol, and the parents had been shot, and the children had all had their throats cut. And they were lying there from the day before. And that's my little people had seen that. We cried. And Andrew did, and I did. We all did. Eva did. He went out. We stopped Petra. We said, stop there. Poor Petra. I mean, she was sobbing. It must have been terribly hard for her, because 16 was still a child. I don't think any 16-year-old should be exposed to that, but we really did need to know what was happening.
What else did you discover?
I said, Petra, please, could you find out which 13 children are the orphans? Petra translated, no, none of them are orphans. We said, sorry, what? The other 7 mothers are in the camp, and everything got turned upside down. As far as I was concerned, those kids were not going to move from our house until they had their actual mothers with them.
So the conversation that Petra translated sounds like the most important conversation.
I'm forever grateful for that, because she saved those children from never seeing their parents again.
After spending the afternoon here...
She went back to school.
And did you ever see her again?
No, I've never seen her again. No.
What would you like to say to her?
The hugest hug would be the only way I know to say to someone, you know, I owe you, big time. Not just for myself, but for them. Sorry. Oh dear, oh dear.
Petra, the mysterious schoolgirl. I wonder if she even realised the importance of what she found out. Discovering that those children weren't orphans changed the course of their lives. It's obvious why Claire wants to find her, but all we have to go on at the moment is one name and the school she went to. So that's where we start. When was the last time you were here, Claire?
A long time ago.
We've come back to Gordonston School to see if they know what happened to Petra.
Oh, Claire.
It is beautiful, isn't it?
Stunning.
Claire is searching for Petra, who did something very important back in 1992.
Do you know what happened to her after she left?
Well, we have got some things to share with you. So the first thing I've got is a photograph.
Oh, good.
This
good.
is Gordonston 1992. Yeah, and Petra is in this photograph.
Oh.
Okay. There she is.
Oh, there she is.
Can you see it?
Goodness me. Golly. Looking very happy.
Yes, absolutely.
Bless her heart. She was so good that day. It must have been so hard for her, you know. I mean, not many people come face to face with the sort of stuff that she heard about, inevitably from the mothers. To do that at that age, not many people could cope with that if they were 10 years older than that. She must have been terribly shocked.
And her full name was Petra Lovrakovic.
Do you have any contact with her?
Well, we did actually find an email address for her. And,
my goodness me.
And we
Seriously?
And we sent her an email, and unfortunately it bounced back.
Oh, no. It's a shame, because I owe her such a big thank you. I really, really do.
In 1992, Claire and her husband Andrew housed 21 children and 4 mothers fleeing the war in Bosnia.
At their Fochabers home, Andrew and Claire Finlay have taken in 25 refugees, women and children airlifted out of Bosnian war zone.
They are sort of children you could meet in the high street going down Elgin or Fochabers, but to think they came back from a situation where they'd been shot at.
Unable to speak their language, they relied on the help of a local schoolgirl, Petra, to communicate with them. With the crucial information Petra gathered, Claire discovered that 13 of the children they thought were orphans actually had families back in Bosnia.
One of the very important things that Petra did that day was to gather together a list of names of the 7 missing mothers and their dates of birth to get them back to this country, which we could never have done without her.
Claire is an amazing human being. She's a rare gem, 1 in a million, but we can't underestimate the role that Petra played. Had she not turned up to translate when she did, the lives of those children could have taken a very different turn.
This time last week, these children were in real danger of being murdered. But Mrs. Findlay doesn't regret her decision.
By that time, I adored the children, all of them. They could not just be fielded out into stranger families. As far as I was concerned, they had mothers, therefore the mothers must be got here.
From a telephone message today, it appears that the mothers so far stranded in Bosnia are on a coach on the first stage of their journey to Britain. The how and when they will arrive isn't at all clear.
I remember Claire told us we're going to get some of your family over, and that was so exciting.
3 weeks later, we went to meet the flight, and we took 2 of the mothers.
For the group of women waiting at the airport today, this was the heart-stopping confirmation that these mothers and children were really safe.
As they emerged from the plane, the other mothers said, look, there's Emina, or there's Zena, and it was just one by one until there were 7, and they were all the right ones. And they came in, and I have to say, it was a very special time.
Meanwhile, 12 younger children were waiting for their mothers at Andrew and Claire Finlay's house near Fochabers. The women and children arrived to a jubilant welcome, and brothers and sisters were reunited.
I remember a bus came, and my brother was the first person to come out, and I gave him this great big hug. And then my mom came out. It was just the happiest day of my life.
The 8 families will at last find some peace together.
I was euphoric to have a moment like that in your life, just one moment, where somehow, God knows how, you've sort of vaguely done the right thing, and it's worked.
After the children were reunited with their mothers, Claire set off to track down every last member of their families.
Petra was the catalyst. I think she deserves to know she saved those children.
So let's go with what I have, which is the name, Petra Lavrekovic. Okay, so there's a few that have come up. Someone in New York. There's a Petra Lavrekovic home decor. There's a Petra Lavrekovic that keeps coming up who's an artist. plavrekovic.com. Let's try that. There we go. Oh, I love her work. She's got some beautiful drawings in ink. And this, could that be what I think it is? Click on that. we go. Gordonstoun School, Scotland. It has to be her. It has to be our Petra. Since childhood, I've been fascinated with the interaction of different cultures, languages, and most of all, people. It's remarkable, isn't it, knowing what I know about her? She was the linchpin. She was the communicator. Let's track her down. So how are you?
Very happy at the moment, because I'm in a place I like. I had some happy times here, happy years.
I mean, you had the most life-changing experience for you and for the group of people that you helped. Absolutely
Yes,
life-changing.
we all lived through it and learned a lot from each other.
So I have been doing a bit of digging around to try and find Petra.
Yeah.
And I've made contact with her.
I don't believe it. Not seriously.
Seriously. She would love to meet you.
I'd love to see her. Thank you very, very much. I was lucky in many ways. I had a lovely husband, lovely children. I mean, it was just the luck of the draw. Just but for the grace of God, I could have been a Bosnian Muslim and they could have lived in my lovely house with lovely Andrew.
There were children rushing around everywhere. The kitchen was always full, and it was occasionally difficult to find a seat to sit down on. It's probably true to say that both of us have gained probably more from that experience than the people that we were possibly trying to help.
I'm just terribly glad that we did do it. As well as the horror and the ghastliness, there was also the love and the sharing. It's a big gain in my life to have a bunch of people like that who mean so much to me and keep showing that I also mean something to them.
The Bosnian War was utterly devastating, the most shocking atrocities witnessed in Europe since the Second World War. 2.2 million people displaced. Thousands of children were separated from their families. But in amongst all of that, there are the small acts of kindness, like the generosity of Claire, Andrew, and Petra. They fundamentally changed the destinies of those children's lives, and many of them have happy lives now in Scotland.
It warms my heart to know that Claire has always remembered me and appreciated my help. It was a natural thing to do. It wasn't about me, it was about them. I was just translating and giving them a voice. In those few hours, it went from laughter to tears, to hugs, to silence. It was very emotional.
You're a wonderful person, you.
Gorgeous thing. Oh, Claire.
You did something amazing. Do you know what you did? Do you realise?
No.
If you hadn't translated that day and let us know that 13 of those children were not orphans, they actually had mothers, they would probably have disappeared like 2,000 other Bosnian children. Because of you. And it must have been... You were a child.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for doing... I've wanted to thank you ever since. I've never seen you again. Do you remember that day?
I do.
I mean, to find one person in Marriage who spoke Serbo-Croat.
Yes, I know.
It was a miracle. It was a miracle.
It really was.
Someone up there obviously
decided. And it was meant to be me. And we were meant to meet again. You are so kind to help these people. I mean, the world needs more people like you.
No, everyone around here helped. Thousands, hundreds of people.
Gathering back at Trockle Hill to meet Petra again after nearly 30 years are the helpers from the local community and 4 of the children she last saw in 1992.
I remember you. So nice to see you.
How are you?
Where do you live? Where do you live now? In Elgin? No way.
What I'm heartily glad and thankful for is that we were there at that particular time for those particular people, because they have done well, they've rebuilt their lives. It could have gone an awful lot worse. Hundreds of people came and helped.
I would say to the Petra of 16, well done. I'm proud of Claire, I'm proud of this moment, and I'm proud that I could help.
Oh, in the middle!
Today I have felt incredibly happy. Something has changed in me. It's loosened the sort of tight stuff inside me that's been there for a very long time.
And the sun is out, everybody. Wow, let's celebrate that.
I sent a little message up to Andrew saying, look, darling, we're going to be at Trockle Hill. For God's sake, make sure it's a nice day. It's like somebody saying, it's all right now. It's okay. You're a magical bunch of people, I tell you that.